Hi, welcome back to a brief Dylan Rounds case discussion, brief video in general. Welcome if you're in this live chat right now, appreciate it. Just like timing stuff going on in the background earlier on, so just push things back a little bit, but who gives a fuck. So basically what we're going to be doing today is just briefly highlighting over the previous comments of the last video, because there are some interesting points mentioned by people about the land, but also there's some counterpoints, okay? So there's not 100% agreement when it comes to supposedly Don Haley's place found. And, for such a small part of the Dylan Rounds case, Don Haley's trailer location seems to be such a deep, ongoing mystery, which is 100% unnecessary, but yet no one can really provide direct 100% reinforced coordinates. Like, you got some people that are saying this is it, but then other people are saying it's not, and some of the people that are saying it's not are providing detailed explanations, and that's why I'm kind of on the fence, kind of like how I worded it in the last video. Because even like when it came to the Kenny Veach case, at times when people came in with information, sure, there was times where you'd listen and probably just brush it to the side because it might sound like it's coming from a kid making up a story, saying a lot of BS. But then other people who may arrange their sentences, include some statistics, some dates, and it makes it seem more believable, right? So it's kind of like a situation here, and it's trying to understand what is what. And obviously the more people that are in agreement with one another, the better it is. In the past, when we've looked at a location regarding Don Haley's trailer, original one, a lot of people seem to think it was that, but then it turned out it wasn't. So there's a lot of back and forth there. Not something that's great, but what else can you do? Because you think about it, you will have some people out there, right, who, whether they live there or they've visited there, okay, and they've passed by, okay, and they've been searching and they've been doing a lot, they've been putting quite a bit of work and effort in over time, right? And yet they can't provide simple coordinates. Maybe it's because it's not of importance to them. Just like with, I guess, Ty Corbyn's outlook on that bra shed where all the clothing was found within. It's nothing that surprising because it happens all over the place, okay? But still, just a simple drop of coordinates would be simple, right? There was more compliant people in the past when it came to the Kenny Veach case. Hikers going out there. Hikers going out to an even more deadlier location than Lucin, right? Mojave Desert, Jeremy Canyon, far more brutal than Lucin, for definite, okay? And yet people risked their lives to go out there and even offered to drop coordinates. I mean, just to acknowledge one thing, you had the odd few hikers here and there, whether it be Scott Natal, Jeff Clark, or, more recent time, SB Vegas Adventures, that either reached out to me or somebody else and said that they'll go out there themselves, risk their possible health, possible life going out there just to be able to record footage and then let others analyse it or hand over photos to me to analyse. That's good of them. They don't have to, but they chose to, and that's good, right? But you see the levels of where people can go to and what they will do in order of solving a case or a mystery. And when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, aside from the drama, the confusion and pettiness, the simple action of coordinates seems to be non-existent. I don't know, it just seems very dysfunctional at times, right? Simple request, but I mean, just being honest, as I said, I'll say it again, when it came to the Grainshed property, when I looked at the maps for the first time ever, it took me like a fucking week or two just to find the Grainshed because it wasn't marked. No one was providing any coordinates, right? And yeah, sure, if I was to look at the place now, would I be like, oh yeah, I really need coordinates for this spot? Right now, no, I don't need coordinates at all. And with some other places, I don't, because I can remember it visually now. But I still understand that when looking back, when you first get involved, me, someone else, another person, they're not going to know, right? So the use of coordinates, very helpful and straight to the point. I mean, good example, like what Tara did recently, providing those coordinates, although it was just labelled as dodgy places, it was specific to a specific location, which turned out helpful. That's the example of what should have happened earlier on in this case. More efficient, more practical, right? Just good overall and clear to follow. Even Spirit recently. Who is this Spirit? Is it the Spirit lurking behind me where those orbs go around? No. Is it Spirit in one of Kurt Wadsworth's psychic readers? Maybe. Don't worry, Kurt. You know, the Spirit hasn't revealed the dress code or anything like that. You're safe. But no, one individual named Spirit has provided like the odd coordinate or actual photo, both satellite and on ground, like a comparison to pinpoint something, which has been quite useful. You know, these levels of actions which I've seen in the last few months has been good, right? But it wasn't around at the start. But then again, it depends when these people came in, and it was like midway through. At least on my channel, right? They may have been elsewhere, looking at other channels, other cases, who knows? But where these actions are displayed now and how it's gone about, the use of material, the footage, the odd coordinate, the odd descriptions, backstory information, all coming about. Although you could argue too late, catching up on it all, but this is exactly how it should be, right? Exactly how I imagined it in my mind, and it has happened, which is good, okay? But yeah, we're just going to check the comments out on YouTube very shortly, just read over them. There's a few long-ish ones, but not too bad, okay? Is there anything else to highlight? I'm sure soon the odd channel might be reinstated from that ban, so there's that. But I guess one thing you can acknowledge, I said good behaviour recently, and if you think about it, there could have been a chance of tension, arguments, because if some channels aren't able to properly live stream, then certain audience members will travel over to other channels, such as mine. Whether that has happened or not, it's been fairly good recently. So it just goes to show that it's okay, even when other channels may not be as active. It doesn't cause it doesn't always cause a massive negative wave in people coming on in because they can't go elsewhere, right? This time around it turned out better, I'd say. But, you know, aside from the Dylan Rounds case, which is quite quiet at the moment, it's pretty quiet. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We'll do a poll right now. With the recent silence in the Dylan Rounds case, news articles, find Dylan Rounds' Facebook page, no interviews at the moment, not much coverage from Doug's channel, is that a good sign or a bad sign? Make sure to vote right now. If I was to give you my thoughts, my ideas, I would say it's more of a neutral thing. Providing those actual searches haven't taken place yet, right? I feel like they might be doing some background stuff to do with Dylan's legacy. They might be doing some things, whether it be arranging dates or finalising that documentary of Dylan. Might be arranging those items in memory of Dylan, sunflowers, those little painted rocks or whatever you call them, etc., etc. All that. And the planning, preparation, preparing for the search in summertime, or the multiple searches. And I guess maybe reaching out to the odd news crew, media, or mainly, well, it can't really be media because we're not really seeing much coverage recently, maybe more so volunteers and groups like that in the background. That's the way I'd see it. And I see it as neutral because not direct progress is kind of halted at the moment based off my opinion, okay? But it's not going backwards, right? I don't believe that they're out there searching at the moment because of weather still, but correct me if I'm wrong. You know, how is the weather over there? I know some people said it was snowing in Montello recently, on and off, okay? But what about Lucerne? Is any, you know, it's probably not likely, but one of two questions, okay? And you can answer them in the chat if you want to. Is there anyone watching right now or watching in the background of this live video premiere who lives in Lucerne? Anyone? If you want to, feel free to leave a comment down below saying yes, okay? Now, if that's not the case, I know there'll be some people nearby, such as Montello locals, but that aside, is there anyone who's visited Lucerne, actually gone into Lucerne, whether it be searching for Dylan, or even just simply camping in the area, whether it be around the time of Dylan's disappearance or years back, okay? Because let's have a little backstory of stories if people want to share them, you know, just put aside Dylan Rounds in terms of the area itself, the atmosphere, right? Maybe around the time when Brenner was, you know, staying there. Has anyone been around inside of Lucerne before Dylan's disappearance, maybe? You know, how did it feel? Did it feel off to you? Did you get any strange feelings when you entered the place? Aside from it being quiet, a ghost town, did you feel anything negative? Any feelings of danger, unsafe, being watched? Did you notice anything strange, any dodgy people, strange activities, suspicion, any of that, right? The only reason why I asked that is there any signs that could have foreshadowed Dylan's outcome, right? Because I know Candice Cooley has said in the past we weren't to believe that Brenner was dangerous, even though Brenner did threaten Justin Rounds. But Candice Cooley also saying that she didn't believe that Lucerne was a bad place and that there was no one convicted from there or Montello due to certain crimes, and yet, well, there were from Montello at least, so she got that wrong. But yeah, just looking at it from a different point of view, because obviously, if you can see it from a point of view of an individual that has lived in Lucerne or very nearby, or has simply just visited, actually been there, what's it like to them? Of course, Candice Cooley has been to Lucerne in the past when visiting Dylan or just passing on by to maybe hand some items over or whatnot. Okay, I'm sure Justin has as well. So they would have taken it in too whilst being there. But obviously, they're not there all the time. Things can change. Things may happen when they're not around, right? So for anyone that has visited at any point in time, did you stumble across anything, right? So there's that. Does anyone feel that there are slight mysteries in the Dylan Rounds case? And what I mean by that is not Dylan's whereabouts, the mystery of that, but is there any sub-mysteries, anything of interest, a particular location, a particular object which has not been found? List little bullet points down below if you want to. If you want to arrange it better and clearer, leave a comment down below in the comment section. And speaking of which, because I forgot to mention it earlier on in this video, if you want to check out my last video, fairly important one and an interesting one regarding the Dylan Rounds case and looking at the maps, I'll provide a link down below in the pinned comment section for you to click on if you want to check that previous video out. And of course, if I didn't say it earlier on, welcome if you're here right now. Feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat as we do go along, such as answering those questions which I provided, just in case you've got anything. I've not really done it that much, maybe only once or twice. I can only really remember it once where I did actually write down on a sheet of paper several different questions, and I can't remember what they were. I think some of them probably would have been answered with time. I'm not at that stage right now to be, questioning lots of stuff, because with some form of progression made in the case, some of the questions fade away or are answered in their own right, okay? Do I feel confused at this moment in time within the case? I feel that there's a bit of information to process and understand, more so from the past, maybe just before Dylan went missing or just after, trying to make sense of that. I haven't really got into it deep enough yet. That's why we're doing it one bit at a time. I think I might even split it down a little bit more with the next video when I do have more time to actually do a proper video to do with the Chase Venstre one. I want to look deeper at Weezer's comment, which we checked in the previous video. I only briefly read it. I didn't analyse it. I want to analyse it in the next video and really make sense of it, because as I said, most of what I read I've never heard of before, so it's new to me. I need to try and understand it, okay? And I can tie that in with one of the maps, at least, of Tacoma Road. And then once that's resolved, cleared up, then I can transition on to revisiting Chase Venstre's homestead and Weezer's additional comment regarding that and those items stolen. Just want to break it down bit by bit, okay? Now, one thing I just want to cut in with, and I'm not sure which point to mention first because I don't want to forget anything, but do you know, when it comes to the Kenny Veach case, not that much in volume because I'm not actively covering it right now. I know people that watch right now and the longer time viewers that watch throughout time, whether it be Andrew Culver, whether it be Smooth Fishing, whether it be Glitter Galaxy, and then like the odd few other people, right? Although I'm constantly covering Dylan Rounds, I'm constantly referring back to the Kenny Veach case with similarities, comparisons, and all of that, right? There's been a lot of crossovers. I've always referred back, I've always linked, quoted, etc. And then that's what's enabled newer viewers to my channel, or people who've come to my channel because of this whole Dylan Rounds case and then have been informed and then gone on to research, maybe look into the Kenny Veach case, right? So I've kind of passed things on. I'm still spreading awareness, even though I may not be directly covering it. It's just because there are some people in the background over time constantly criticizing me, having a go because I'm not covering it, right? But, you got to remember, I covered the Kenny Veach case for over two years. That's quite a while, right? Over 2 years of coverage, specifically on Kenny Veach and M Cave, exclusively. Only that. I've been covering the Dylan Rounds case now for, 7-8 months? Not even 2 years. Sure, I've made arguably more videos on the Dylan Rounds case than the Kenny Veach one, but that's just because of levels of material and levels of coverage, right? You got to understand, there's a level of patience. 2 years covering Kenny Veach, a few months covering Dylan Rounds. Patience, right? Patience. And as well, the other additional reasons to why I continue to cover the Dylan Rounds case is because there is stuff to cover. I don't like walking away from things where there are important stuff to cover, because if I walk away from it and then I come back at a later point in like a week or two, I might forget, my mind might be somewhat limited, or I might spaz out, or I might start becoming very inaccurate all of a sudden. I don't want that. That's not good, right? I like checkpoints. And I was almost at a checkpoint recently, but because of Weezer's comments and her information shared, because of the likes of Spirit as well, with them sharing their bits of information, which is all good, it's obviously reopened more things to cover, right? So more stuff to do until I get to a checkpoint, and then I can decide what happens from there, right? And as well, because of, the drastic, okay, let's be realistic, the drastic significance of people that have come along to my channel because of the Dylan Rounds coverage, people that were already involved in the Dylan Rounds case from day one, and then when I came in and started covering it, and then some people started watching, some of the past people started watching, continuing, which is good of them as well, the originals, and then other people on other channels came over to here as well. I said the significance and the rise of, you know, a few key people supporting the channel in different ways, which is very good. So, and as well, just coming across good people in general, considering the amount of toxicity out there outside of this channel, as some of you may have experienced yourself if you've been on other channels or been attacked by certain people, come across good people. Obviously, I came across good people in the Kenny Reach case in that community, and some of those have continued over and continued watching, which is good. But it just feels like there's been a drastic increase of coming across good people and people that have supported the channel. So that's what encourages me, but also makes sense to keep the Dylan Rounds case coverage going. It just makes sense, right? If people are willing to watch and say this and be positive then and be good, then I should, you know, cover the key points. Yeah, it probably sounds a bit confusing that, but makes sense to me. So the other thing I wanted to point out, okay, before I forget, is with Aidan Clune. Why does it feel so quiet on Aidan Clune? I know the odd other channel out there has been doing their coverage over and over again, in which maybe some people feel like it's just basically gone round in circles, but I just don't see any news articles about Aidan Clune, right? I do acknowledge that last night, that live stream, Lance Kelly interviewing Aidan Clune's mother, I believe, not watched it yet, okay, because obviously my videos and my live premiere last night, of course, was busy doing that. At this time, I'll try and listen to it. I don't know how long it is. I know some people were saying it was still ongoing and still live. Is it about 3 to 5 hours long? Anyone confirm? And, you know, if there's anyone in the chat right now that has watched that interview video of Aidan Clune's mother with Lance Kelly, you don't have to, only if you want to. Do you want, you know, can you summarize what was talked about? Like if you want to bullet point it, just brief, so other people get a rough idea of what was actually talked about. Indiana is good with that sort of stuff when it comes to summarizing and, you know, just basically saying what happened and what was talked about. But, you know, if there's anyone else that wants to do it, feel free to do so in the comment section, where you won't be limited with the characters and words as in the live chat. So do it down below in the comments if you want to summarize it, okay? The one point that was mentioned by someone was saying how the mother said that Aidan Clune's tracks stopped once the snow melted away. I was trying to understand that at first, because the way it was worded as if, what, all of a sudden now? And that's only because in recent time or so, kind of getting on a bit, with obviously the snow, winter time, dragging on, maybe for some people out there, the snowfall, I just thought they meant recently, but I assumed they're referring to back then when Aidan went missing and the police were out there searching for those tracks. But I did ask that person in the chat last night about, what do you actually mean by these, you know, these footprints melting away and not being traceable no more? And they just repeated the same comment, but they weren't answering my question. And I'll reiterate my question right now. These supposed footprints that just disappeared because it was imprints in the snow, was this back then, back in 2022, when the police were out there looking for Aidan Clune? Or are you talking about right now? I don't know. But if anyone can clear it up, feel free to do so. But yeah, it's probably not necessary Side question, is Candice Cooley in contact with Aidan Clune's mother? Does anyone know? And if anyone had to do a quick observation on the spot, what's Aidan Clune's mother like in comparison to Candice Cooley's? Levels of body language, behaviour, attitude, tone of voice, all of that, just for the sake of it, right? I know some people get very aggravated by this sort of stuff, thinking, why does that need to be looked at? Why does that need to be checked? Just simple questions, right? Simple observation. That's all it is. You get an observation, you get an understanding of what's around you or what you're dealing with, right? And you know what steps to make next. It's all part of a deeper mechanism, right? Like a clock. So I think what we'll do now, and wow, the time has gone on quick. Let's look on YouTube and check those previous comments out. If there's any interesting information, any questions that need to be answered. Here we are, just that. What do we have to begin with? My Green Mountain Life. So this is Tara, the individual with many nicknames and usernames, almost bordering onto the, let's just make a quick observation right now, Tara. Yes, Tara, I'm talking directly to you. You've gone through all these different usernames, so long that it doesn't fit on the bloody screen. We were making comparisons to the length of her username to the length of these very long comments provided by different people, including Sun, which was appreciated. I don't think it quite cuts it. I think the reality is that Tara's usernames are almost as long as the Great Wall of China. Yeah, I'm sure. Anyway, what's this? The chat shut down on me. What happened? Not quite sure, to be honest. Indiana, you keep changing names. YouTube's fed up of you. Oh, Indiana. Hitting in with possible reality check. Don't know why it happened there. Am I shut out for my chat? My server is blocked. Ooh, that's weird. Did Bigfoot try infiltrating your compound, and did he start fiddling with the wires and the internet connection? Oh no. Naughty Bigfoot, maybe. But I don't know why it happens to some people. It's happened to Glenn on a few different occasions. It's happened to Bob Farrell and someone else in between. Now, just a quick question. Has anyone heard from Bob Farrell recently? Where's Bob? Where's Bob? Bob? Where are you? Not seen him recently. Anyone else? We've not seen Stephen the turkey handler. You remember him, Stephen? Don't know where he's gone. We've not seen King Samoan or King Salmon, banger of white chicks. That's what his username was at one point. Where's King Samoan gone? Who else was there? Kongzilla. Not seen him recently. There've been numerous people that could still be around, just simply observing in the background, simply observing, which is fine, understandable. I know a few people have done that at times just because of the way the chat's gone here and there, but there'll always be ways and methods of being able to watch and avoiding the trouble, right? Let's continue. Raided team. I'm in Riverside County, California, the San Juanita foothills. Those trails are new crop fields to mark upcoming crops or whatever you're planning to seed. Right. Those trails are new crop fields. When you're talking about those trails, are you talking about those trails in Lucin, or are you talking about those trails in your area, what you've seen? What do you exactly mean there? And as well, we're talking about those lines in the ground back at Dylan's farm. That was in 2019 satellite imagery, though I think they still show up in the 2022 imagery, if I can remember correctly. Anyway, what else do we have? Only board sheltered morons conspire or make this complex? Tweakers, junkies, murder, and rob good people in the desert mountains. The end. Are we in the desert mountains, though? When we're talking about Lucin, where Dylan's farm is, the grain shed property, that's on lower ground, lower flatlands, and even in Montello. And for most part of it, most of the crimes that have occurred in Lucin or Montello, it's been within the neighbourhood on flatter grounds. I mean, has anyone heard or remembered of crimes which have occurred in the past in those areas, but in the mountainous parts where it's harder to reach, the gradient is steeper? You know, just like how we've questioned the practicality of Brenner disposing of Dylan Rounds and taking him to the mountains. Is it really practical there? Wouldn't it be more on flatlands? Just let me know your thoughts. Only bored, sheltered morons conspire or make this complex. Are you referring to my videos or are you referring to somebody else? Like, the reason why there's a fair bit of questioning going on here and there is simply because there is no definitive answer, and there'll be people out there that could provide an answer, but depends if they're willing to, right? That's just how it is. And you look at some of the videos out there on other channels, some of the titles directly worded conspiracies, or I think at one point it was about crisis actors faking it, pretending it all going down that route. Now, all I would say is when it comes to these ideas of things reenacted, faked, pre-planned, people acting as if they're hurt, if they're dead, whatever, etc., they never seem to come to a complete head of an ultimate piece of evidence which reinforces that stuff. It's just always, juggled around within different cases or different crimes or different bad events in the world. It's never like nailed on the head, nailed down with pure hard evidence to prove that stuff. It's just always roughly talked about, so it doesn't really go anywhere. What do we have here? You need a permit for every building with concrete. I wonder how many of these sheds, trailers bypass that law being on pallets, so he could move his house if he wanted to. Also, that's desert lowlands, the gold create a glimmer, sand appearing white, etc. I mean, okay, there's been quite a bit of talk about sheds out there. Weezer's commented on it, Ty Corbin has mentioned it, and of course they're going to know because they are in the area, right? They see it themselves. At least from my point of view, I don't quite see it, at least from the satellite imagery I've looked at. Okay, I've seen containers, I've seen RVs, but I've not seen sheds, unless their definitions of a shed is different to my definition of a shed, right? Anything else? And yeah, speaking of those things being on pallets, so houses could be moved. Well, from the looks of it, most of the people within the Lucin area seem to be in RV trailers, which are mobile themselves. They just get pulled away, towed away on the back of a truck or something and move on from there. See it with, I guess, Ed Harshberger to an extent, but that was left behind up to a certain point. Dylan Rounds, of course. Brenner, of course. Don Haley, of course. Chase Venstra, in a way, moving about. Don't know about Robert Aviles. Does anyone know Robert Aviles' place of living? Did he live in a trailer, in a house, in a hut, a shed, or a shack? Does anyone know of a rough area, if possible? Just surprised. And I'll just reiterate it once again. Considering people have been out there, physical, hands-on, searching out and about, and some other people in between which may have, done things the family aren't approving of, let's say. I'm just surprised no one has looked at Don Haley's trailer, and I mentioned that in yesterday's video, but it just doesn't make sense. Of all the places people have looked at, and yet they've just not looked at Don Haley's trailer. Is it just because they simply believe Don Haley isn't linked with the case? There's no real reason to be suspicious of him, and that's why they've not looked in that trailer. Is that it? Or they just feel that the police have already searched that area, it doesn't need to be checked again. But if any of those mindsets did tick the box for how they think and perceive the case and the environment, then what are they doing going here and there, going to the wash or going to the grain shed if it's already been searched, supposedly? You know, what's the point going down here, going there? What's the point going down to bloody Chase Venstra's homestead in a bloody different state if he's got nothing to do with the Dylan Brown's case, you know? I mean, you could put the argument across that Don Haley is higher up on the list of suspicion than Chase Venstra is, just based off location, and that Don Haley knows Dylan more than Chase Venstra does, etc., etc. And with Don having links with Brennan having links with Don, that triangular formation. And yet people are just not looking into Don Haley as much. Have people given up looking into Don Haley with time? I mean, the people on my channel, the people that leave comments and start discussions, they've still stuck by it, questioning and raising, I guess, awareness about Don Haley and possibilities of this and that. I guess Doug from No Thanks has touched upon it, Candice Cooley had in that interview that one time, but elsewhere it's just kind of died down. And you got to understand, you know, people can only cover it for so long. I mean, look at Moonshine Sundragon, if that's her name, that German person. You remember Moonshine Sundragon? Not seen them for ages. I did leave a message at one point in the past, but they didn't respond, so I don't know what's happened there. There'd be a few other people in between. I think there was a person called Paige at one point that turned up on my channel, then another one called Lacey Ann, then another person, then Danielle or Danielle, however you say the username, showed up. You know, people do come and go. Some of them have moved on to other cases, you know, and so on. It's understandable, right? I mean, it's like 50-50, 50%. Where are we at with the case? Are we getting anywhere or not? People may move away if they feel the case isn't going anywhere. Or people move on because they feel the case has got to a point where they themselves feel satisfied with the progression. The other 50% is simply a stamina war. That's what it is, a stamina war. More so with Dylan Brown's parents and family, with them having to keep on going, both looking for Dylan and spreading awareness and distributing stuff and planning things in between. That's a stamina war there. But on a slightly smaller scale, but still with some form of significance, people on YouTube, certain channels out there covering the case, and obviously the physical stamina of the direct people on YouTube that have gone out there searching for Dylan with time. It's all about stamina, because at a point and time, you'll either get physically or mentally drained, tired of it, okay? Now, I myself, you know, if you look back, I might have been going round and round in circles, telling the same story over and over again, just as a form of consistency, and questioning things too, and talking how the events played out and the timestamps and the dates, going round and round and round, whilst also adding on new points down the line and tying up loose ends. But so much repetitiveness, you could think equals madness, right? Completely going crazy, but no, that's not the case. I guess we've done the Kenny Veach coverage for over 2 years, built up a little bit of resilience to be able to combat the repetition, right? The only good thing with repetition is with time it gets a little bit easier to handle or remember, such as the information, right? I guess it's kind of same with back when you're in high school and you're revising information, like reading through books or writing stuff out, summarizing it, having a few conversations about some of the questions. That is kind of like what we're doing here, okay? So, you know, if anyone misbehaves, probably get detention
or to stay behind in class. Ooh, do you really want that? I don't know. But yeah, definitely stamina involved. And of course, just it can apply to people watching the videos. That's a level of stamina, keeping up that attention, retention rate, keeping up that hunger in wanting to continue learning about the case and hearing about the latest stuff talked about, you know, especially if some people are a bit busy at times or the things going on here and there in the background, and yet, you know, people still manage to work around things and stuff, right? Because a lot of it is about stamina, and you know, the people that do drop off with time, it's not their fault. It's a normal thing, right? But you might get a few people that keep on going. I mean, look at Wes Stump the Thump. I think I said that name wrong, but never mind. 6'2", built like a brick wall, 225 pounds of brute force. My God, Indiana, what are you, 4'2"? Don't even know. I think the ring was calling you back. Gotta put that back in your finger so you become invisible. Then Gollum won't bite your hand off, man. Don't worry if Wes comes about. You just pick fucking Gollum and chuck him over the mountain, man. God. Anyway, let's move on. What do we have here? Radical says, if he wasn't buried, we aren't finding remains. Bears, mountain lions, coyote. I mean, people lose livestock constantly. I think the point what Raided Team is getting at here is that if Dylan was just simply tied up in a building or even just left out in the open, eventually wildlife would probably bite at Dylan and scatter the bones with time due to decomposition and the bones being more exposed, right? Happens with animals, happens with humans. That's kind of like one of the points what we did bring up within the Kenny Veach disappearance, that if Kenny Veach is truly out there in the desert, right, and he just simply collapsed, succumbed to the environment, starvation, exhaustion, going into a cold trap, change of temperatures so sudden, being impacted negatively, killed on the spot by an animal or maybe a falling rock, he'd be just flat out where he is. And even if he did appear to go into some kind of cave or opening and dropped there, if animals have access to it, they'd probably get to him and still spread the bones about. But if a person is literally buried in the ground, there's less chances of the bones being spread about, unless it's a shallow grave, right? If it's a shallow grave, maybe due to weathering, maybe flooding, it could unearth something or a bit of the remains, and then maybe the animals dig at the ground too. I know Ty Corbin has said a few times that when you, and people in the chat, of course, here, like if you see like birds or vultures or something circling a certain area in the sky, then most likely there is like fresh remains of something or maybe someone. That's like a sign you got to look out for. And when it came to the Dylan Rounds case, that never really happened unless people weren't around at the time when it was needed, unless Dylan was buried as soon as possible. And that's why you didn't have the opportunity for the birds to be hovering about, right? That would make sense. Though, just a quick question. When Heavy D did that flyby of the area and supposedly found a dead body out there, were there any birds circling that dead human or not? Was that just fresh? Because that still is kind of not been answered, right? I don't know if we'll ever need to spread awareness of that. I don't know if Candice Cooley will ever bring it up, but if down the line, let's just say, if down the line there is another live stream out there at a particular time, obviously not suited with UK time, but if you yourself as a viewer are watching the likes of No Thanks, Doug's channel, and like how they ask those questions, etc., if you was able to provide a question in that live stream chat and just ask and inquire about that supposed dead body found by Heavy D, was it truly the case, and who was it, and was it fresh or not? You know, those type of questions. One question I have towards people right now is, maybe I don't know if we can do it as a poll or not. I'll think about this. Do you yourself believe that Dylan Rounds was buried deep in the ground, or was it a shallow burial. I think at the end of the day, regardless, it was done somewhat well because they've not been able to find Dylan at this point, and they've not noticed any soil disturbance either, which has led to finding Dylan, from the looks of it at least. So there's that to take in mind. But if you had to think yourself, with Brenner, the way he disposes of things, like with the objects, if it came to disposing Dylan, how would Brenner do it? Would it be a good job or a poor job? Would it be a deep burial or a shallow grave? Let me know your thoughts. Because if it's shallow, as said earlier, with the environment, the weather, and possibly animal wildlife, they may dig up and uncover Dylan's remains, but down the line, if he's not found soon. If it's a deeper grave, then maybe the animals probably won't see it, notice, or sense, or smell it, so it'll be forgotten. I know some people do feel that Dylan will never be found, and although that is a negative outlook, maybe they're more realistic than some, who knows. But I guess best thing to do is just at least wait for those summer searches, see what it's all about, with that ex-military coming on in, helping, and maybe additional equipment too. See what can happen, what can come out of it, right? And I would say, if nothing did come out of it after all that, then if it's not too late, it's probably best reaching out to Brenner. That's what I would say. Let me know your thoughts in the chat. Do you agree with that point? Any more comments here? We got Glenn. I pray. Oh yeah. Well, that's literally what I just brought up just then. Yeah. Understandable. Holly, shout out to Holly. Looks to be a new viewer, saying 511 is for travel information. She was just basically answering one of my questions in the last video when we were on the highway, and I saw a sign saying 511. So that's explained now. That's all good. Lady Liberty, shout out to Lady Liberty, I guess a newish viewer or someone that might have just popped in and out on the channel. She says, I keep getting shut down, so I don't know if this is the video I was watching that mentioned a box or not. The box that is hard to see, I think, is not a beer box, as those usually have a very large and bright coloured font to better advertise them. So that's unfortunate to hear, Lady Liberty, that you're getting shut down. Do you mean you're getting shut down that you're getting kicked out of the live stream? Because that's what Tara said, and the odd other person previous. I don't know why it happens. I think it's YouTube spazzing out, being a bit silly at times. Majority of people aren't having issues, so it's a little bit strange, right? And just as a heads up, when it comes to people watching videos, people can't, aside from like membership only or stuff like that, you put that aside, a human can't be denied of like watching a video or a live video premiere, you know, especially if it doesn't go against any TOS and it's not removed in that way or censored in that way, and it's not members only restricted. Just a simple public video, live video premiere format, live stream format, or just watching it in its post form as a standard video. You should be able to watch it without any issues. Even people that have been blocked, right? Like people in the chat that may have blocked other people here and there, they can still watch, but they may not be able to comment, in which some people can't see at times. But because I don't block people, I can see all the comments, right? But if I did block someone, like in the past when we were dealing with some issues in the past, they could still watch the videos, right? So just to put that into perspective. So I don't know why people are getting shut down or kicked out here and there. It's a bit odd. But in response to that box, it's not regarding this video, Lady Liberty. I did do a previous video, and the thumbnail was actually of Cal Ranch store in Burley, Idaho, with Dylan on the front of the thumbnail. down an aisle of boots and shoe boxes. And it's when we were looking at the dirt mound at the grain shed nearby, in which there was a box half buried in the ground, or mostly buried in the ground, covered. And we just saw a bit of redness on the box and some kind of symbol. I think that's what you're referring to, Lady Liberty. That's an older video. Some people thought it could have been a beer box, but then other people didn't. I guess due to weathering as well, if it was maybe a beer box, likely cardboard or some kind of paper material, surely it would have got very soggy and broke down. And yet it looks to be in good condition, decent condition. Could it have been more so a shoebox? Can shoeboxes have like a waxy coating to prevent it from maybe wearing down as fast? I don't know, I'm sure someone may have touched upon that. But yeah, that's what the talk was there. Was it ever resolved? No, but you know, it's in public view, it's there to watch and to reference back. You know, Weezer, if you've got any thoughts or ideas regarding that box that was buried in the ground near to the dirt mound, feel free to give your thoughts. Or if there's anyone else in between, make sure to do so. Herbs Healers Pam, saying great video. Thank you. Ronald Cully. You know, I'll be honest, when I saw Ron in the past, is Ronald Cully Ron Tello, or is that another person? I don't know how many Rons there is. Right, I'll be honest with you, on screen right now, when I saw that profile picture, despite the username, for some reason, the first thought that came to my mind was, is that a woman? Is that the Shack lady? I don't know why, but I just thought that profile picture was of the Shack lady. I can't explain. It was just the first thing that came to my mind. And when I saw the username, Ronald Cully, and I thought, oh. But then I started getting confused, thinking, is this some kind of Kurt Wadsworth crossover, literal cross-dressing, get-together, fashion show, catwalk, weekend in Paris? I don't know. But, you know, Ron is Ron, a male, okay? Just to confirm at the end of the day. He's popped in here and there with time. Now, is this the guy that did some video in the past called Hostage, Kidnapped in Montello, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 of a police investigation in Montello of someone kidnapped? Is that the same guy? Not quite sure. Anyway, he says, I have not seen any visuals of ploughed fields at Dylan's farm. Well, we've seen that field 2019 satellite imagery, I think going into 2022 as well, of that like square-ish patch where it looks like it's been raked. The ground's been scraped. But even when looking at that pivot, that line that goes all the way down, didn't seem like too much activity. But then again, it's probably maybe the time of day, time of month, whether Dylan's around or not, you know. You just work with what you have. I guess satellite imagery can be limited at times, which is a shame. Patsy says, I found Sun's comments from previous video very interesting, and I'm just echoing what the comment said. Brenner may not have been the only person Dylan pissed off. Sun's right. There are other ranchers in the area that may not have looked too kindly on Dylan's activities. I believe 100 that Brenner harmed Dylan, but there may have been outside influence and he could have been the patsy. Don't know what that means. But, Sun, why not Grouse Creek? One of Dylan's next door property owners has a successful ranch in Grouse Creek and owns many parcels in the Lucerne area. It seems this ranch is very influential in the ranching community and with community water usage. I mean, if there was ever levels of competitiveness, maybe that could have been a slight motive somehow within this all. But, you know, this is just a very quick theory. If the theory, an alternative one, was certain ranchers, farms in the areas that didn't like Dylan, saw him as opposition, maybe they paid Brenner off so Brenner could take Dylan out, and then these farms, ranchers aren't, you know, threatened anymore by competition. But That's unlikely considering Brenner got tuck in and he's not exactly benefiting, right? And he's not been released either. So you could somehow treat it as hierarchy and Brenner being a fall guy if you want to tie it in with that theory, attach two together. But at this moment in time, I just don't think that's the case. You know, if evidence down the line reinforces these alternative points of views, then fine, but I don't think it's happened yet. Anything else here? I've gone down a rabbit hole, Warlike Ref saved me. Well, that's good. That's good. Whether it be preventing people from falling down them in the first place or pulling them back out. Either way, that's all good. There you go, Maria. Maria, save the rabbits. Pull them out so they don't lose their carrots. I guess that's how we can word it. Let me know your thoughts about, Patsy's comment, but more so Sun's comment from last night. Do you agree with it? Any interesting points that stood out to you? Oh, here we go. We've got Wrangle. Wrangle Inhabitant 1. Those gate looked like a piece of sheet. Okay. Some random ugly stocks bound somehow together. It could not be ruined. It was just a crappy construction from the beginning as everything that belonged to Brenner. Wait, what gate are you talking about? The gate looks like a piece of shit. Are you talking about the gate approaching the Grainshed property where Dylan stopped at on the 28th of May 2022 at 6:51 a.m. to make the call to his grandmother Karen Rounds? Is that the gate you're referring to? Because it was actually partially shown in one of the news reports in the past covering the Dylan Rounds case of the area. It was around a time of interviewing Heavy D as well and the other guy with the beard during that time of when they came over to help Candice Cooley with that drone for the first time, the full spectral one. That's what that news report was about. And I think they might have showed a clip or an angle of the fence. If it wasn't that, it would have been maybe a news report just before that coverage, but it was definitely of the Grainshed property, and they did show the gate, and it looked very flimsy, right? Ellenberg has said it herself. I think Weezer has said it herself as well. A flimsy gate, not the greatest of things, but it can at least hold horses back. I mean, like with the UK, you get fields here and you get farms, and they've got like a thin bit of barbed wire, and that's all, and yet that's enough to keep the bulls from running about, or the cows, the horses. So I'm sure fence is somewhat effective, but as for a human, they can either climb over it, providing there's no barbed wire, or just run it over or flatten it to the ground and then drive over it. So yeah. And with Brenner being lazy and maybe limited to money, he was just working with what he had at the time and what he could be bothered to construct, I guess. We got Danny, final comment on here. Danny the orangutan. Interesting profile picture, my boy. Anyway, he says, this is in response to my video coverage of those coordinates in which it was north over the, I think, maybe railroad tracks around where we thought we saw Don Haley's place that trailer, where that concrete structure was in the ground. Danny says that is not where Don Haley lived. He lived 1.5 miles to the west of there. That roughly ties in line with what Ty Corbin has said as well. So there's a level of consistency there. The trailer you showcased is the home of another resident, which can be verified from a county plat map. It is the trailer that Lance pointed out in his video, but Lance was mistaken when he identified it as belonging to Don Haley. Well, if that's the case, oh, fuck me, here we go again, right? So the misguidance, possible, and I'm saying possible misinformation, right, originated from elsewhere, other channels, possibly. Wow, isn't that typical, right? This is what I mean. One can only work with what they have and what they have to put up with all the confusion and the back and forthness, right? Very interesting. Now, what I will try and do sometime is this talk about Don living 1.5 miles to the west of there. Are you talking about 1.5 miles to the west of Lucin Pond? Is that what you mean, Danny? Or do you mean 1.5 miles to the west of that spot in my last video, which I was suggesting was Don Haley's place? Let me know. Because at least when I was checking previously on the 2019 imagery, because there was no trailers to look out for, it was hard to follow the directions, right, provided by Ty Corbin. Though, with that 2022 map imagery, it most likely will show up with a trailer, and we can take a look at that. And if I do find it and document it, then I can point out, and then we can say, oh, well, there we go, we found it, mission complete. But what seems to be the case, from how it's worded here at least, that trailer, which Lance Kelly documented, recorded in his video, when Lance was going into Lucin to explore about and look at Governor's Spring, Lance passed by a trailer, which appeared to be abandoned, and labelled it as Don Haley's place of living. Yet this comment here by Danny is saying that's actually owned by another person. So the video what I covered last night, assuming that was Don Haley's trailer, supposedly wasn't. But it was the location of, and from that video of Lance Kelly pointing it out. But Lance Kelly got the wrong person, the wrong property. So that doesn't really help. Could that explain to why people have not been to that trailer and not bothered searching in it because it's not Don Haley's? Do you see how back and forth it is? And this is a small point within the case. Though, it'll keep going back and forth until there is a direct answer. I am aware Spirit has their own coverage and photos, which I'll try and get into. Just gotta clear the other videos off the list so I'm not sidetracked or distracted, right? And then there'll be a bit more clarity to be able to focus. Anyway, let's continue reading. The concrete structure is the ruins of a rock crushing facility used by the railroad from 1923 to around 1938 to produce ballast for expansion of the railroad. It didn't show up in Lance's video because it is just the foundation and is only a few feet high. That's kind of like what I suggested in my video. Notice the mountain next to it has been leveled. It was a quarry. Yeah, I noticed that. There are the remains of a larger stamp mill built into the side of the mountain to the north of the concrete structure, and the scars from several rail lines leading to and from it. The railroad extracted 60 rail cars of ballast per day from the mountain for about 15 years. So it's good of Danny to leave this comment here. At least from the way he's worded it, the sentences make sense. The structure too, the information provided, looking to appear factual information. It seems as if Danny knows what he's talking about, I guess. So you're probably more likely to believe in it and understand. But does anyone disagree? Does anyone have any counterpoints with valid points or information to go against this? If necessary, feel free to do so. But yeah, so I guess the search for Don Haley's bloody trailer continues. Wow. Is that it for the comments? Yes.
So, as said, going to be a brief video. I think that we'll leave it there. Let me know if you learned anything new, or we'll see if anything interesting popped up in the actual discussion live chat box and go from there. Who knows what will happen next, if there's any more twists and turns or random wacky stuff, but I guess we'll find out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, whenever that video comes. Goodbye and good night for now.